Okay, so for number 11, it's designing, defining, and triggering CSS3 transitions without custom libraries. So the 11, 12, and 13 topics, one's transitions, one's transformation, the other is animations. So I have transitions and transformations today. So transition is an animation from one set of CSS properties to another set. And then you can specify over what amount of time you want that transition to happen. So to do that, you have to have two different styles defined in your CSS, and then the transition property will be on the original style, and then it'll tell it what to look for before beginning the animation, but I can show what that means. And then there's a trigger, like if you hover over a button or you click on the button or something like that, that triggers it. And then as soon as that trigger is gone, it goes back to the original style.
And sorry, real quick,
Go
when
ahead.
you say trigger, that's a CSS trigger?
Yeah, like
Okay.
hover or clicking or something. Well, yeah, because you can define hover in CSS like this one. For example, you can tell it when you hover over it, but then when you click it though, on click is like a
That's JavaScript
JavaScript though, so
or in the HTML.
yeah.
Do you know if there's another trigger besides hover in CSS?
I have no idea actually.
I don't think I don't think there is.
Yeah,
Is
that
there
might be
another?
the only one. That's the only one I've ever used, at least.
Yeah, that's probably the only one that you'd ever want to use for
Yeah.
something practical.
Yeah, so I guess you can use your JavaScript to also use a transition, but this one it's just hovering over it. All of the ones that I have examples for, you just hover over.
Okay.
Um, so So I guess I already said this. So you set it and then it will revert it back to the original one after you're not using that trigger anymore. And then this link here has a list of all of the CSS properties that you can use with transitions. I just have a couple of examples. Um, so when you're adding it, you define how long it's going to be used for, the type used, what the properties will be, and then you can also delay it. Like you can hover over something, but you can put like a 5-second delay so that it doesn't actually transition until 5 seconds are up. So it's really simple. This is an example of it. So this button here is green with white text, and then when you hover over it, it's going to turn purple and gray. But then you have to create the transition effect here. So it's green and with white text, and then here is the transition property, and it's telling it the color and the background color are what will change, and then the duration is just 1 second, which I'm pretty sure just means after 1 second it's happening because it doesn't just happen for 1 second. So I think that actually I'm pretty sure duration was it takes 1 second to transition from one to the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually I'm just realizing I have that in there twice and that doesn't need to be there. But yeah, so that example is just right here. Okay, so this is the button that turns to purple when you hover over it. So the code's really simple. It's pretty straightforward, I feel like. You just have to um, define it and tell it what it's going to be when it changes, and then you just use this transition property here to tell it which properties will be the ones that change. So then there's these other ones too. So this one has a delay, so it's the same thing, but after 5 seconds of hovering, then it's going to change to purple. This one is a timing example, so you're changing how long. I think that's the duration thing. So like you're telling it how long it'll take. And then this one, transition shorthand is kind of weird. I Googled it and couldn't find very much about it, like this person had used in their example. But basically, you can just say, you don't have to say transition property. You can just say transition and then tell it what you want to do. So that's why I think it's considered shorthand. It's nothing like, it's not a different, it doesn't tell it to do anything different. It's just, you can just write transition instead. Um, but yeah, does that make sense for the most part? Sorry, I kind of like
Yeah.
breezed through it.
No, that's good. Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. So, no, sorry, that's the wrong page. Um, Transitions. Yeah, so this is the shorthand thing. It's just telling you that you can just write transition instead, which is kind of silly. But yeah, so that website that I included a link to, if you want to look at it, it just includes a bunch of different transitions that you can do.
Okay.
And then transformation is basically the same thing, or transforms, I should say. Um, so this allows you to move or rotate, skew, scale an element, and then you can do all of those things to an element, or you can just do one of them, or you can do however many of them you want. And so it seems like these are used to like draw attention to something on a web page, and you can, like the examples here, or you can rotate it, or you can increase or decrease the size of it. Probably a similar thing where like in CSS you would use when you hover over it, it'll make it bigger or smaller or rotate or whatever. So this one is a little more confusing, and I feel like it just are things that makes the most sense to Google when you're doing and just kind of look it up, because I feel like it's different for each one. So when this button is active, which is when you click on it, so I guess active would be another trigger instead of hover, like we were talking about. But you can tell it to transform, and then you tell it how to do it. You're translating it 1 pixel this way and 2 pixels that way. And so when you actually click on it, it just moves it down and to the right. So I'm not like 100% familiar on what each individual property does and how to modify them, but I also kind of feel like it's not something that you have to memorize. It's something that you can always look up, kind of. But I also, do you know why some of them have, like, some of the CSS properties have WebKit in front of them? I saw that a bunch when I was looking things up online, and I don't know why. Have
Um,
you ever seen that before?
no, I'm not sure. Like in practice, I don't really use like just plain CSS because there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of like libraries that you just use that do everything for you. So I'm
Right.
not really familiar with that.
Okay. That's all right. I saw a bunch of them that had like a bunch of the transforms all had like WebKit in front of it, and I don't really know why. But so like here's another example of, oh sorry, this one. It was rotated by 350 degrees here, and this one, the button can increase in size when you hover over it, and then this one was rotated and skewed along the X and Y axis. So kind of makes it so you can do whatever you want, but I don't really feel like any of these things are, it's like, oh, you need to memorize this so you know exactly how to do it, you know? But anyway, does that kind of make sense at least of what you can do with transform?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry, that one was like a little bit harder for me to understand, and I Googled quite a bit and felt like these were still the best examples, and I didn't find any like actual example of code that was any more clear to me than this one. So that's why I ended up using that. But yeah, so that's both of those. And then
Um,
yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
real quick. I figured out what it is. WebKit it's the engine that they use for the animations. So where it says WebKit,
Yeah.
that's where certain browsers use that engine for animations. And then the Moz, that's Mozilla O's Opera. So it's just specifying what engine to use to perform that animation.
Oh, you know what? I bet that this is. I wonder if you have to have all of these, like, just in case, depending on which browser you're using, because they're all doing the
Yeah.
same thing. They're moving it 1 pix down and 2 to the right.
Right.
So,
So you could probably just have transform, and it would probably work for most people.
okay. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, okay. That makes way more sense then. Now, because I was wondering why there were like 4 different transform translates that were happening when it was only moving in 2 directions, but that's probably why for whichever browser. But I think this is just the basic um, syntax for it, though.
And then just something interesting that I just noticed when you try to Google WebKit, you said you couldn't, nothing would come up when you try to Google it.
Yeah.
You have to put it in quotes, otherwise it thinks it's trying to read like CSS, and so it doesn't include it in your search.
Oh,
So I put it in quotes, and then that came up.
that's probably why.
Yeah.
I tried to Google something with a symbol the other day because I don't even remember what it was for. But it was like the symbol was necessary or it didn't make sense, and it was like it like wouldn't even search the symbol at all.
Yeah.
It didn't like that. Probably should have put it in quotes though. That would have made more sense. Anyway, okay, those are my super short presentations on those 2 things. And I'll do animation on Wednesday, but I'm guessing it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
Okay.